Imagine, just for a second, that you spend months rolling dice with your friends. You carefully level up your hero, you gather all this magical armor, you survive these absolutely impossible odds.
Right. You feel totally invincible at that point.
Exactly. You walk into a room feeling completely untouchable. And then the game designer essentially looks right at you through the text and says, well, you are going to be captured today, you're going to lose absolutely everything, and there is nothing your dice can do to stop it.
I mean, it completely violates what we consider the fundamental social contract of a game. You expect your choices to actually matter.
Yeah, absolutely. If you have ever played a modern video game and hit a cutscene where the villain just automatically defeats you no matter how flawlessly you played,
Yeah.
you know how incredibly frustrating that feels.
Oh, for sure.
Now imagine that happening in 1981, sitting around a table with your friends and being told your stats just simply do not matter.
Welcome to this deep dive.
It is quite the topic today. It really is. Today, we are taking a comprehensive dossier on what might seem like an obscure artifact from the early days of tabletop role-playing. It is a module called A3, Assault on the Aerie of the Slave Lords.
A classic.
Right. And our mission today is uncovering how this one specific publication completely revolutionized game design.
It really is a watershed moment. Just for some historical context, A3 was published by TSR back in May 1981.
Okay.
And it is a 32-page saddle-stitched booklet, which basically means it is just a thin, stapled pamphlet.
Wait, just 32 pages?
Yeah, exactly. But within those 32 pages, which were written by Allen Hammack, the entire industry basically shifted.
I mean, we are looking at the exact moment the medium grew up. It went from this mindless arcade-style beat-em-up where you just kick down doors and swing a sword to a really tense, sophisticated game of tactical espionage.
Yes.
But to understand how this single pamphlet changed everything, we have to look at the environment it was built for, because this was not designed for a cozy home game, right?
Oh, definitely not. A3 was forged in an absolute pressure cooker. Specifically, the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons Open Tournament at Gen Con the 13th back in August 1980.
I can only imagine the sheer chaos of a convention in 1980. TSR was transitioning from this scrappy little wargaming startup into a major corporate publisher at that point.
Precisely. And Gen Con was their grand showcase, so the crowds were just massive. To accommodate thousands of eager players, the tournament actually required an unprecedented 7 rounds of continuous play.
Wow, 7 rounds.
Yeah. The logistics of managing that many people, keeping the games balanced and, keeping everything on a strict time limit, it was an absolute nightmare.
So how does A3 fit into that massive 7-round gauntlet?
Well, A3 actually contains the material for 2 distinct stages of that tournament. It houses the 5th initial round, which is this really treacherous subterranean cave approach filled with traps.
Right.
And then if your team actually survived that, the very same booklet contains the entire semifinal round, which takes place in these municipal sewers in a fortified inner sanctum. Now, if you are running a tournament with hundreds of people, you cannot just let players bring their own characters from home.
No, absolutely not.
Right, because someone is going to show up with a wizard that has incredibly overpowered gear that conveniently just found in their own living room. You need a completely level playing field.
That is exactly why the module came with 9 pre-generated, heavily play-tested characters. Everyone played the exact same roster.
I love that. And there were some real fan favorites in there, right?
Oh, yeah. They became legendary in the community. You had Alita the Dwarf, Blodgett the Halfling, a hyper-strong human fighter who was literally just named Ogre.
Just Ogre. That is great.
Yeah, and some complex magic users, too, like Dread Delgath and the illusionist Van Stern.
But here's a detail from the research that I found just absolutely brilliant from a user experience perspective. Because the adventure spanned 2 different tournament rounds, the designers actually printed the stats and equipment lists for these characters twice. Yes, they printed one set balanced for the entry round, and then a fully updated set with new gear and spell selections for the semifinals.
Think about the cognitive load that saves for the person running the game.
Oh, it is massive.
Right. You are in a noisy convention hall. You have been managing rules for hours. Your brain is completely fried. And instead of making the players manually recalculate their math and shop for new items during a 10-minute break, you just hand them a fresh piece of paper and say, go.
It is so elegant. But the real revelation was not just the logistics. It was this monumental shift in how the enemies actually behave.
The tactical paradigm shift.
Exactly. Prior to this, if you look at foundational modules like Tomb of Horrors, the challenge really relied on adversarial game design. They were basically funhouse dungeons filled with arbitrary instant death traps.
Right, like you touch the wrong door handle and your character is instantly vaporized.
Yes. But for the Gen Con tournament, the designers realized they needed to showcase the actual depth of their combat system. They wanted to test player skill, not just raw luck.
Makes sense.
So A3 proved this radical new concept.
Yeah.
It showed that mathematically weak monsters like simple orcs and low-level humanoids could be utterly terrifying if they just used strategy.
Because before this, monsters generally just ran at you and fought to the death.
Right.
But the guards in A3, they are smart, they take cover, they set up ambushes. I read that if they start losing, they actually retreat down the hallway to pull an alarm gong and bring reinforcements.
They do. They use the environment against you, like dumping buckets of flaming oil from a balcony.
Which is just wild. I mean, if you are a player used to just relying on the raw mathematical power of your character's stats, how shocking is it when a low-level goblin suddenly outsmarts you with an alarm gong and a bucket of oil?
It completely shatters the illusion of raw power. The realization that you can be outsmarted fundamentally changes your whole approach to the game.
So logically, if a frontal assault suddenly means the entire fortress drops flaming oil on you, kicking the door down is suicidal.
Exactly.
You have to adapt, which forces the players into an entirely new genre of play.
Urban espionage. You cannot fight the whole city, so you have to sneak through it.
And what a city it is. Let us paint a picture of this setting for you listening. This is not just a damp cave. The players are infiltrating Sudurham.
Yes, Sudurham.
It is a fully functioning sovereign capital city built on an island, and that island sits in the center of a crater lake, which is nestled inside the caldera of a massive volcano that the outside world falsely believes is extinct.
The geography alone does so much heavy lifting there. It creates this claustrophobic, inescapable tension. And for the lore enthusiasts listening, that specific volcano is designated as Hex A4104 in the World of Greyhawk setting.
Oh, nice detail.
Yeah, and the city inside it is meticulously organized into 4 distinct quarters. You have the official, military, wealthy, and the thieves' quarter. There is even a heavily fortified jail managed by this imposing figure named Samovar the Cellkeeper.
But the innovation of Sudurham was not just its cool location. It was how the city was actually presented to the players sitting at the table. And that brings us to the cartography of David LaForce, who was known as Diesel LaForce.
His maps for this module are just legendary. At the time, maps were strictly utilitarian, just blue or black grids on graph paper meant exclusively for the person running the game.
Right.
But LaForce drafted a player-facing map of Sudurham. He drew the crater walls, the streets, and the geometric layout of 68 specific buildings.
But he did something totally wild. He removed all the text and labels before handing it to the players.
He deliberately stripped away all identifiers.
It is like using a GPS on your phone that only shows the gray lines of the roads, but hides all the street names, the businesses, the restaurants. You know a building is there, but you have no idea what is inside.
Exactly.
You have to physically point your finger at a blank square on the paper and tell the table, well, my character is going to scout this shape.
And mechanically, that blind exploration perfectly supports the core theme of espionage. You're creeping through alleys, peeking in windows, trying to figure out if the building you're hiding behind is an empty bakery or a barracks full of guards.
This blank map actually sparked a huge debate about sandbox design. Because during the tournament, to keep the game moving fast, the designers just told the referees that most of those 68 buildings were simply closed.
Right, just to save time.
Yeah, but if you bought this module to run at home, Allen Hammack actually gave you the underlying details for a living city.
He really did. He provided a robust city encounter table and notes on the local economy. For instance, there is a house of ill repute, where a gang of local troublemakers will deliberately try to provoke the heavily armed players into a street brawl.
And if you fight back, you blow your cover.
Exactly. There is also an Assassin's Guild with strict mechanical rules punishing anyone who commits a freelance killing within the city limits.
I want to pause here and look at modern gaming trends, because today, if a company releases a city guide for a role-playing game, it is often a 200-page hardcover textbook.
Oh, easily.
It details every shopkeeper's daily schedule, their family lineage, their exact inventory down to the copper piece. But does not LaForce's blank minimalist map actually give the person running the game more creative freedom? Like, does it not lower their cognitive load compared to memorizing a massive textbook?
Absolutely. For the Dungeon Master's cognitive load, yes. Providing a skeletal framework lets them improvise without constantly checking an index to see if they are contradicting the official lore.
Right.
But let us be fair to modern games. Those 200-page books exist because today's players expect a level of deep, interconnected world building that a blank 1980s map just cannot provide. It is a trade-off between improvisational freedom and guaranteed depth.
That makes total sense. But wait, if the players are staring at a completely blank map with just geometric shapes, how on earth do they know what this world looks or feels like?
That is where the artwork comes in. The visual identity of A3 is what archivist historians call the Electrum-Age of TSR art.
The Electrum-Age.
Yes. It was overseen by art director Jim Rosloff, who somehow managed to unify the incredibly idiosyncratic styles of three distinct illustrators. You had Jeff Dee, Errol Otis, and Bill Willingham. They were known as the first four of the company's art department.
Let us talk about those styles, because they really bring the blank map to life. Jeff Dee did the kinetic cover art and the black and white interior line art, right?
He did.
His work captured this dynamic, almost comic book energy, though, tragically, the highly detailed character portraits he drew for those pre-generated Turnmill characters had to be cut from the final printing.
Yes, because of severe convention deadlines, a massive loss for modern collectors. But then you have Errol Otis, who operated in this surrealist, weird fantasy space.
His stuff is so unique.
It really is. He drew the strange, alien-looking guards at the Suderham Gate, and he is responsible for the famous back cover, which is a very pulp-inspired scene of adventurers fighting an ankylosaurus.
Which is just classic, unfiltered pulp fantasy. Dinosaurs and wizards. And then there is Bill Willingham. The research highlights his use of a technique called inkwash.
Inkwash is a fascinating choice. Instead of just drawing harsh black lines, you use diluted ink applied with a brush to create soft, grayscale gradients.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, William used this for a really sophisticated atmospheric half-page scene of an assassin infiltrating a slaver harem.
And the reason that matters is the medium itself. I mean, they were printing these modules on incredibly cheap paper stock. Achieving that kind of shadow and depth on low-quality paper was rare and really difficult.
It elevated the whole aesthetic, and those visual elements were matched by the written villains who stalked the players.
The slave lords.
Yes, the module is named after them, and these 5 leaders actually monitor the players throughout the adventure using a crystal ball.
Which gives the whole experience this pervasive, unseen threat level. You are sneaking through the city, but you are constantly being watched. The syndicate includes Feitla, an exiled Sea Prince buccaneer, Nerelis, the spy master, Ayaxstu, a heavy-hitting arcanist, Brother Millerjoy, a monk from the Scarlet Brotherhood, and the mastermind pulling the strings, Mordramo.
What is really fascinating about Mordramo is the continuity retcon that happened years later.
Oh, right.
Yeah, in the original 1981 text, the mastermind is definitively named Mordramo. But in 1986, the company compiled the whole series into a single super module. In doing so, they changed the overarching leader to a man named Stallman Klim.
So how did they explain the old name?
To fix the continuity error from A3, they just explained that Mordrama was not his name. It was a terrifying title meaning I am death in an ancient tongue.
A very clean comic book style retcon to pave over a plot hole. I love it. And speaking of names, Allen Hammack loved linguistics and wordplay, right?
Oh, he really did.
He loved combining Latin and Greek roots to make hidden jokes. For instance, the city itself, Suderham, literally translates to Southhome, which is just a subtle nod to Hammack's own roots growing up in Alabama.
He also had quite a flair for dark humor.
Oh, absolutely. My favorite example from the dossier is this assassin character you can run into. His name is spelled Ayares, Ayers.
Right.
But if you say it out loud, it is just the IRS, the Internal Revenue Service. It is a literal joke about the absolute inevitability of death and taxes.
That is classic. And beyond the wordplay, he also played with player expectations using encounters like the Yono deception.
Yes. Please explain this one because it perfectly highlights that theme of brains over brawn.
So one of the most bizarre encounters involves an 8th-level human illusionist named Wimple Frump.
Great name.
Truly. He wants to control the local gnoll population, which are these aggressive, hyena-like humanoids. But instead of fighting them, he uses powerful magic to project the towering, terrifying hologram of their demon lord, Yanoku.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he controls them through sheer religious intimidation.
Deception over sheer force. It perfectly mirrors what the players are supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
You also find these anachronistic sci-fi loot items hidden in the city, like the invisible sword of lions or a Leyden jar.
A Leyden jar being an early, real-world prototype of an electrical battery.
Right.
In the game, it delivers a massive shock, which kind of hints at the weird, high-tech ancient history of the world.
But for me, out of all the incredible lore, The absolute funniest behind-the-scenes trivia is the title itself, the A series.
Ah, yes, why it is called the A
You
series.
would think the letter A stands for Aerie, right? Or maybe something deeply profound about the lore, but no. They literally just chose A because alphanumeric availability meant it would sit at the very top of alphabetical retail order forms.
That is so true.
They wanted it to be the very first thing a hobby shop owner saw in a catalog. The S&T designations were already taken, so they just grabbed A. Is that cynical or just brilliant marketing?
It perfectly captures the dichotomy of the era.
Hmm.
You have this incredible, sophisticated artistic endeavor paired with the ruthless, pragmatic reality of a booming business trying to maximize its visibility in a Sears catalog.
It is brilliant. But let us bring it back to the narrative, because all of this, the brilliant urban stealth, the wordplay, the vibrant art, it all funnels the players toward the most controversial aspect of A3, the climax,
Yes.
an ending that was engineered specifically to crush the players.
The unwinnable trap. The module introduces a creature called the Storopor in the initial Drakensgrab caves. It is a stone variant of a classic monster, but it possessed a domination power that was terrifying for one specific reason.
Which was?
It allowed absolutely no saving throw.
And for anyone unfamiliar with the mechanics of these games, a saving throw is essentially your last-second safety net. It is a dice roll to see if you instinctively dodge out of the way of a trap or if your willpower resists a mind control spell.
Exact.
Removing that safety net entirely is just brutal.
It was a massive mechanical innovation. It forced players to rely on absolute avoidance or overwhelming tactical force.
Oh.
They could not just casually stroll into danger and rely on mathematical luck to save them.
Right.
And this creature perfectly sets the stage for the module's core theme, which is hubris.
The entire module is basically a Greek tragedy. The players are these powerful high-level heroes. They have successfully infiltrated the city. They have outsmarted the tactical guards. They have navigated the assassins. But the adventure is a carefully orchestrated snare.
It is
In order to set up the sequel, which is A4, in the dungeons of the slave lords, the players must lose. They have to be captured and thrown into the slave pits.
structurally enforcing defeat is arguably the most risky design choice a creator can make. In the Gen Con tournament setting, if the players manage to reach the inner sanctum, they are automatically overcome by an unavoidable, invisible sleeping gas.
Hold on. If there is no roll to save yourself, if you just automatically pass out, is not that just poorly designed, unfair storytelling? How does that work if you are playing at home outside of a strict tournament timer?
Well, the module accounts for multiple player choices to ensure the exact same result. If you lose the final battle and your character dies, the slave lords actually use powerful divine magic to resurrect you.
Just to capture you.
Yes, just so they can interrogate you and throw you in the dungeon. And if you somehow win the battle and try to press forward, or if you realize it is a trap and try to retreat back through the sewers, the text instructs the person running the game to deploy infinite, insurmountable waves of elite military guards.
Wow.
The capture is completely inevitable.
This sparks a massive ethical debate among game designers, even today, because taking away player agency is kind of the ultimate sin in tabletop gaming.
It is.
If your choices and your dice rolls do not matter, why are you even playing? Does a railroaded failure ruin the experience, or does it feel earned if the story is good enough?
It forces us to look at the legacy of the adventure path concept. A3 was the linchpin that connected a massive, multi-year narrative arc. It took players from the Temple of Elemental Evil through the Slave Lord series, all the way to the Queen of the Spiders.
So it was a narrative bridge.
Exactly. It was a cinematic bridge connecting the high fantasy, powerful infiltration of A3 directly into the survival horror, resource-starved prison break of A4.
I see.
Without the bitter pill of that forced capture, the dramatic tension and the desperate scramble for survival in the next chapter simply does not exist. The emotional payoff of eventually escaping and defeating your captors is entirely reliant on the frustration of having lost to them first.
It makes the eventual victory actually mean something. Looking back at it, A3, Assault on the Aerie of the Slave Lords is a 32-page masterclass. It really bridged the gap between mindless convention gauntlets and modern, expansive narrative sandboxes.
Absolutely.
It taught players to use their brains instead of just looking down at their character sheets. It taught game masters how to run living, breathing cities using just a blank map. And it cemented the concept of the massive, interconnected, multi-part saga that really dominates gaming today.
It is an indispensable chapter in the evolution of how we tell interactive stories.
But I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought about that unwinnable climax about the illusion of victory. A3 relies heavily on the psychological shock of stripping powerful heroes of their agency and their gear.
It hits hard.
It does. It forces you to hit absolute rock bottom. But in today's era of gaming, where design is overwhelmingly focused on constant player empowerment, unlocking massive skill trees, and endless winning, we might have lost something profound.
That is a really interesting point.
We might have lost the memorable storytelling value that comes from a shared, devastating experience of absolute defeat. If you can never truly lose the game, does winning even matter anymore? Is our modern obsession with constant empowerment actually making our stories less interesting?
It is a challenging question,
Yeah.
and it is the exact tension every designer has to grapple with when they build a world for someone else to play in.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Remember, whether you are exploring a sprawling modern video game or creeping through a minimalist 1980s crater city filled with invisible sleeping gas, there is always more to learn. Until next time.